Netanyahu, indicted by the ICC, still like swanning around in our Congress. For a white guy to get indicted by the ICC is pretty serious, because before that, they're all African. If another country was using rhetoric like this publicly, let's say the Russians made statements like this about Kiev, what would the global reaction be?
Outrage immediately.
If Israel does it to the native Palestinian population,
It's completely inhumane.
Elon Musk is the richest man in the world. They dragged him by the ear to Auschwitz. Never said a word about this situation in Gaza. It's the richest man in the world. He doesn't have free speech.
All right, welcome back to the Rice Report, everybody. Eric Rice here. Just a quick reminder, if you like what we're doing here, you like these episodes, go ahead and subscribe and share. I get told to say that all the time. I always forget, but I guess that's how this thing is done. This is a nonprofit here. We don't make any money. We just want to get information out to everybody and do our part in the information war that exists today. Today's guest is returning to us, Patrick Henningsen, one of my favorite people out there, because he's boots on the ground, he's ears to the ground, and he's no nonsense. He's going to talk about a lot of different things today, so stay with us. And today we're going to begin kicking this thing off with talking about what is happening with the ceasefire between Israel and Gaza. So welcome back, Patrick. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's great to be with you, Eric.
What is going on here? You know, we keep hearing all these, we hear peace talks in all over the world, but we're not seeing peace. We had a gigantic to-do here in the United States. I know you're in England, but in the United States, there was a big celebration because there was a ceasefire signed and hostages returned. But has that actually stuck? Where are we with the peace treaty here in Israel, Gaza?
Well, I think we can rewind the clock back to, you remember when Donald Trump was sworn in at the end of January, at the beginning of his term, there was a ceasefire that was arranged before the swearing in. And then that more or less stayed in place for a month and a half, I would say, almost 2 months, obviously with some violations by Israel, but that's pretty standard. They have like a 0% record of holding ceasefires and 100% record of breaking them. But that aside, was basically the same exact deal. It's the same exact, and it's the same exact ceasefire that Biden had for that brief period after October 7th for a hostage exchange. And so it has been done before. The problem is Israel's has other plans. So while this story is happening in the media, like, and Trump will pose, and the Trump administration will pose as like wanting to stop the fighting. Okay, but it's a bit disingenuous because we're supplying all the weapons, all the bombs,
That's right.
all the ISR, all of the reconnaissance, the overhead flights with the intelligence, the satellite, all the Patriot missile batteries that make up the Iron Dome, THAAD missiles, everything like that. So we supply it all. So we're not U.S. We're not neutral. We're not a neutral. But Trump, as well as in Ukraine, will try to postulate the role that he's playing is a neutral broker, trying to stop the war. But you can't. U.S. is a co-belligerent, and until you have a leadership that is honest about that, and they can't negotiate anything. I mean, when your son-in-law is in charge, ostensibly in charge of Middle East policy, your son-in-law and your buddy who is possibly a dual citizen, Steve Witkoff. I don't know the details of it, but he is Jewish American as far as I can see, and he is literally in the pocket of the Israeli lobby. He was handpicked by Netanyahu, okay, as the rest of Trump's cabinet was, and then he's there in the Knesset, and hobnobbing with Netanyahu. So I can't work out if they're in Trump's cabinet or if they're Netanyahu's cabinet. Like, it's really tough to work it out. This is the problem. So, and Trump will, appoint people that are clearly on one side. Mike Huckabee is a good example. I think he's crazy personally, but whatever. But Trump's last,
he's illiterate. He can't read scripture. That's for certain.
I wouldn't be surprised. Trump's last Israeli ambassador was his own Jewish accountant, David Freeman, or I can't remember his name. But I mean, talk about bias. You're not going to get any independent kind of diplomatic positioning on anything, because Trump administration is probably the most pro-Israeli and arch Zionist U.S. administration in history, 100%. And that's a problem. And so they really don't regard the Palestinians as, fully humans. They're sort of, much like blacks in apartheid South Africa, they're sort of second class citizens. And you can't have any kind of peace agreement unless you have two sides, and both sides, are going to get something. But in the case of the U.S., will not recognize a Palestinian state. Israel has already said it's a non-starter.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the main, things that would make any agreement work. But it's completely wrote off. It's not going to happen from a U.S. and Israeli point of view. That's a fundamental problem right there. That's something that can't be reconciled at all. And so it also means that no third party countries can come in as a guarantor, because most every other country has recognized a Palestinian state at the United Nations General Assembly.
Yeah, there are only 10 votes against a Palestinian state. It was the US, Argentina, Israel, and then like 7 nations nobody cares about. Like I've never even heard of half of them.
Yeah,
Only
like
10.
some
It's like,
tiny country somewhere, Faroe Islands and maybe Micronesia or something like that.
Yeah,
But
Micronesia was like, where's Micronesia? I have no idea where that is.
yeah, and Javier Milei, whose I think original family name was Milikowski,
That's correct.
same as Benjamin Netanyahu.
Netanyahu.
So they're sort of second cousins, possibly, as if it doesn't get any worse. But yeah, that's the problem. Is there's not a genuine ceasefire. It's not. It's not for Israel. It was a strategic pause. It's kind of obvious. That's what it was, as well as the other one. The one Trump had when he came into office was a strategic pause for the IDF to regroup, also to rearm. They were low on stocks. They have reservists that are not responding to call-ups at increasingly record numbers. So that's a problem, because if you can't man all of the posts, they run a 24/7 security state there, Israel. Like every single road, every single access road, every single checkpoint, just the checkpoints, the prisons and the roads and stuff like that. You're talking about huge manpower requirements there. And then if you
But
add,
somehow, Patrick, guys on hang gliders and dirt bikes got through there with unnoticed, undetected. Somehow.
yeah, that's the October 7th thing. I mean, that's a separate conversation to have.
Yeah.
But the
Just want to make that known.
yeah. But the further we get away from that date, the less relevant that becomes, even if they did let it happen and so forth. Unfortunately,
what's done is done.
Events have taken on a life of their own, to orders of magnitude beyond October 7th. But that said, Itmar Ben-Gvir, National Security Minister, Bezalel Smotrich, Finance Minister, all these people openly saying we need to annihilate every last human in Gaza. They need to be killed or driven out. Now, if another country was using rhetoric like this publicly, let's say the Russians made statements like this about Kiev or something like that, what would the global reaction be?
Outrage immediately.
What if, God forbid, what if another country like, the Lebanese president said that about Jews in Israel? They'd go ballistic. They'd be all like, oh, it's the Shoah again, and so, but if Israel does it to the native Palestinian population, they're from there. It's a settler colony, the European settler colony, Israel, talking about annihilating and exterminating the native Palestinian population openly in their parliament, in their media. That doesn't raise any alarm bells in Europe, in the United States, and all of these sort of pro Israeli governments. That basically, I think many of them are, if they're not blackmailed, they're completely coerced and not functioning in any objective way in terms of their viewing their foreign policy. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, how could you back this situation, continue to back it after 2 years?
It's completely inhumane. Like
it's insane.
In all levels. It's completely inhumane.
It's bad for everybody. It really is. It's terrible for Israel. Of course, for the Palestinians, it's deadly. It's biblical, in fact. For the U.S., it's not good, because you have to pay the piper on this eventually, and clearly the global population is kind of against this, and for good reason, because we all should be against that. And
Yes.
they are for the most part, but it's only the advanced and more powerful Western countries that are sponsoring and backing Israel, because they've been captured. Those governments in Britain, France, Germany, the United States, Canada probably as well. But even Canada has wavered a little bit on this issue. But they're all bought and paid for by an international Israeli lobby that is so well funded and has mobilized politically for decades. They're so effective, and they also will demonize any politicians that go off the reservation in the media. So there's a whole system of coercion between the money, the lobby, the media, and all these NGOs that are, like the ADL. I mean, they will troll and hunt down any high profile figure. Even Elon Musk was against the wall with
Yeah.
the ADL, if you remember,
Yep.
until he flipped. They dragged him by the ear to Auschwitz for a struggle session with Ben Shapiro and Rabbi Shmuley and like 20 other rabbis.
He got some free sex toys on the way out from Rabbi Shmuley, probably.
Probably. And then they dragged him to Tel Aviv for the October 7th propaganda tour.
Yep.
Bibi actually dragging Elon around. And so after that, Elon never said a word about. And can you imagine? It's like he's so outspoken, seems to opine on everything. He hasn't said a word since then about this situation in Gaza. And so he knows he's done his thing. He's going to keep his mouth shut. So he does. It's the richest man in the world. He doesn't have free speech. Isn't that amazing? He can't. He cannot. And instead, he's having to boost. Someone's making him boost Tommy Robinson and all these complete dodgy Israeli assets. Basically, Tommy Robinson is a known Israeli asset. It's not a secret. This is in mainstream reporting. They fund him. Israeli interest, and so David Horowitz was bankrolling him. Middle East Forum. This is an Israeli operation. So forth. So I mean, that's who Elon's busy. Even him. Imagine that, richest guy in the world, and he's being dragged around by the ear. I mean, that's how well organized and effective this machine is, and the end result is total complacency by our governments, and not only that, cooperation. They're enabling it. They're facilitating it with Israel. Can you imagine a country that their prime minister has an indictment in the International Criminal Court and
defending him,
still like swanning around in our Congress and showing up and getting state visits everywhere like a wanted war criminal? Even Tony Blair and Bush didn't have indictments in the ICC. Netanyahu does. That means it was for a white guy to get indicted by the ICC is pretty serious, because before that they're all Africans. The whole institution was constructed to target and indict and get regime change and things like that for enemies or governments that the United States wanted to sort of knock out. Even though the U.S. is not a signatory to the ICC, to the Rome Statute, they have their people inside, and they can maneuver that organization, which they've done as well to indict Putin. Actually, Putin's the first white man ever indicted by the ICC.
That's right. I forgot about that.
He broke the color barrier. He broke the glass ceiling. The DEI
He's the Jackie
ceiling.
Robinson of international court.
He is dead. Putin is. He's a Jackie. Perfect. He's a Jackie Robinson of.
You did it. You did it, Vladimir. You did it.
He did it. He's just like, wow, the glass ceiling. So but yeah, they have a hall of shame. I've been to The Hague. I had to do a module there as part of my master's degree in international relations. And what I remember is when you walk in, it's a very sterile building. It's on an old artillery range. Actually, it's not a good vibe. But you go in there, and there's a wall of shame in the lobby. And I went in there in 2018, and it was good. It was very good just to see how the whole organization works, and even in the back offices and understand the structure and stuff like that. But I looked up in the lobby at the wall of shame. I think there was 7 people that had been successfully indicted up to that point. They're all Black Africans. I think there was 1 North African, I think. And I was like, really? This is the only war criminals in here? Is these guys? I don't
in the
think
whole
so.
world. Yeah.
I don't think so. Slobodan Milosevic, who was a president of Serbia, he wasn't indicted by the ICC. They had a special tribunal, which was across the road there in The Hague in the Netherlands. And that was a total stitch up. That was a
Hmm.
complete stitch up. One of the biggest injustices ever. And that was after the breakup of Yugoslavia by NATO by force,
Yeah.
and then the creation of the fake state of Kosovo,
But
which
that
is
actually cost the ICC a lot of credibility. So that's one of the events where people will say, "Oh, well, Netanyahu's an ICC criminal. Look what they did to him."
right.
Right? We have that imbalance of credibility with that
Yeah,
statute, that board.
yeah. I
Big
mean,
problem.
but it's interesting because Netanyahu has used this.
Yeah.
He's used this to test the European leadership, like saying, "I'm coming to France," and of course they'll roll out the red carpet. Or he's going to Hungary. He stays for 4 days in Hungary. Hungary is a signatory to the Rome Statute, a member of the ICC, did nothing. Goes to England or to the UK, they're a signatory, and then they allowed the Americans to sanction. There have been all these European countries that are like, oh, these are our global institutions. They let the U.S. sanction the ICC and go after Karim Khan, the chief prosecutor,
That's right.
who's
That's right.
actually doing a decent job. I mean, so I mean, that's how powerful the support for Israel is. They're above the law. They're above all international law. They're above U.S. law. They're above British law, whatever. And by being complicit, playing a role in this clearly this genocide. And by the way, the International Courts of Justice, the other institution across town, the ICJ, they have issued their final guidance, and I will say right now, if it's official, they have found them guilty of genocide.
Yep.
And it's only a question of whenever that document's published next week or the following weeks, but that's kind of a done deal. Even though it's a formality, and we kind of obviously know that, but at least
But it's being formalized.
it's being formalized, and it gives some additional weight to the ICC indictments and to countries that basically are no longer going to toe the line on this, like Spain. There's a few other countries in Europe and also internationally that basically can now have a little bit more of a free hand to treat Israel how it should be treated, which it should be completely boycotted.
Yeah.
And rightly so. I mean, that's how the South African apartheid regime fell, was through boycotts and
Yep.
sanctions. And that's the only way. You're not going to defeat Israel militarily, especially if they're being backed by the United States. Ain't going to happen. But you can defeat them economically. And if Trump then goes and attacks people that are sanctioning Israel, that's not going to be a good look.
No.
It's not. I mean, what do you have to do to protect these insane, sadistic criminals in Israel? What do we have to do? Do we have to then tear up the First Amendment and cancel everybody for criticizing Israel? Deport all the students, throw them in jail? What in the UK? People protesting Palestine action, the direct grassroots action, that are targeting Israeli arms companies to prevent the arms from going to kill Palestinians.
That's right.
Like the same type of stuff Greenpeace or Just Stop Oil. I don't support Just Stop Oil at all, but
No,
they use
it's
the same
ridiculous.
tactics. They
Yeah.
use the same tactics, and it's legal. It's criminal damage. You get arrested for criminal damage. It's not terrorism.
Right.
So they've made Palestine Action a terrorist group, and yet the IDF, they can come to London, and their top guys can do lectures at the university in Westminster and whatnot, no problem. And the guy who's indicted by the ICC, Netanyahu, can show up and he gets a state visit. But they're arresting their own citizens for trying to stop a genocide.
Right.
So it's like that's how inverted, and in the U.S. it's the same. They're calling these students. Look, they're trying to say, oh, this is the woke Palestine support. They're
Yeah.
calling it
Pro Hamas.
pro
Yeah.
Hamas. It's ridiculous.
I had an
It's
argument with AJ Rice about that on this podcast. I'm like, I don't want Palestinians killed, but I'm certainly not pro Hamas. Stop with the nonsense. That is the most
it's
ridiculous
stupid.
thing. Nobody's pro Hamas.
Most of those students don't even know anything about Hamas.
Right.
But it's a way to label and then demonize and ultimately shut down the freedom of speech and assembly that is the right of every American.
That's
It's
true.
their constitutional right. But that's why I really have a problem with the Trump administration and Marco Rubio in particular targeting people for exercising their First Amendment or writing op-eds in student newspapers and things like that. It's just totally out of order. I mean, he's
Propaganda.
acting as Israel's private speech police.
Right.
Our own government. Like, why are they doing that? You can criticize the U.S. government all you want, but you can't criticize the Israeli government. That's a bit of a problem, and I think a lot of people are noticing this now, and in the millions, in fact. And while they, I think, had short-term success in these attacks and to demonize these people aren't stupid.
Right.
They know it's BS. And over time, it's ultimately going to hurt the credibility of those people trying to enforce all this on behalf of Israel. It's going to be a bad legacy for all of them because they have so much blood on their hands. And I think you can hide it, you can sort of mitigate it, you can gloss it over for now, but all these guys are going to have a lot to answer for. The Biden administration, sure, but the Trump administration comes in, you see all that carnage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before, and you'd think they'd be like, yeah, we want to wind that down, that's pretty ugly. No, they instead it's escalated.
They cranked it
And
up.
they cranked it up, and that's
But that's
this
where
is
you have these two different opinions. Like my opinion is there's a dialectic change coming where I think that, our friend Simon, I'll give him a lot of credit for that. He's really broken down following the money. These GCC nations are growing in economic strength. And I
Mhm.
think that economic strength is being ported from Israel to the GCC nations. I don't think it has anything to do with America at all. I think it has a lot to do with these GCC nations, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, growing economically, taking away that economic power in the region. And I think that's clear to see when you follow the money. On the other hand, you have people who are saying, well, everyone is noticing this now. So maybe Trump is orchestrating this to get rid of Israel and backdoor Israel. I don't think that's the case. I think it's getting you to accept in the end that power in the Middle East is transferring from Israel to these other friendly Middle Eastern nations economically.
Mhm.
Israel is not friendly economically to anyone. Every policy they have is very Israel first, everything. And we
Yeah.
should be clear on this before we get into too much trouble, because I don't think either one of us really care. But it's important to note that in Israel, half of the nation doesn't want this happening. Half of the Jewish people and the actual non-secular, non-atheist Jewish people especially do not want to see people killed in Gaza. There are massive protests that are happening right now to get rid of Netanyahu and this
Mm.
entire psychotic regime. But that doesn't help things. It's the same thing here, right? Like we do it all the time. Like I always tell people, look at America from a European point of view, and especially during like Biden, and you look at that era. Does that represent you? No. So don't blame every person in every country for the things that their government is doing. I think that's very pro-human point of view. It's not everyone there that wants. It's not every Jewish person. It's not every secular Jewish person or religious Jewish person. It is a regime of hateful, evil people who want to conquer another nation and steal the land. And that's going to happen. I don't know that there's anything that stops that train.
Well, the Palestinians are putting up a quite a resistance. They're still there.
Yeah.
After this, it's just to me, it speaks a lot about the human condition, and the determination to survive, and their deep, deep root connection with the land. You got to have a deep connection with the land
Yes.
to try to endure that. Latest report: 680,000 dead, missing, or excess deaths. Latest academic report
Wow.
on 680,000. No, that's dead, missing, and excess deaths. That includes anybody who's died from an injury, who has died from malnutrition, starvation, disease that it's a direct result of the siege that Israel has laid on Gaza. No food, no water, no power, no medicine, bombing all the hospitals, and
680,000?
680,000.
I heard like 120 last time I heard. That is a
There-
massive number.
there's different studies. This one is counting excess deaths, which is correct, because it's the official number is like 60 or 70,000. That's just from direct casualties from airstrikes and stuff like that. But the real death toll is much, much bigger, and they can't even keep the records. anymore,
Mm.
because they don't
Got some,
have
like,
the
displacement, disease,
all,
starvation, stuff
all
like
that
that. Yeah.
all that yeah, it's all should be tallied. The UN has endorsed this report. The UN Special Rapporteur for the occupied territories. She has endorsed this report. So, I mean, it's just an example of the fact that it's way worse than the media is letting on, and so
Well,
forth.
of course, our media is owned by Israel. I mean, that's
So,
pretty obvious.
but back to your original point, just to backtrack, um, the polling is quite shocking in Israel. Is way more than half do support what Netanyahu is doing in Gaza, but the pushback against Netanyahu is from people who want him to go for political reasons, but the
Mm.
polling on the genocide, if you will, is quite shocking. Where it's upwards 70+% approve of
Wow.
it. It's a lot. It's a lot.
All those polls I saw were just get him out of office, put somebody else back in here, and keep this going.
Yeah. That and unfortunately,
Wow.
what you have to understand about Israeli society is that in the last 20 years, it has shifted so far to the right.
Yeah.
So the old center is now like on the far right in Israel, and so you have these fanatical settler types that have developed huge constituencies. So this Likudite and Likud coalitions, with the sort of almost like kind of a Nazi level of ethno nationalism
Sure.
of some of these Israeli far right groups. It's sort of people that used to actually be banned from Israeli politics, and
Now they're welcomed.
they're in cabinet position, leading cabinet positions now. That's, I mean, it's pretty shocking transition in Israel. And part of it is just because they're just doubling down. They've dug themselves so deeply down this road that it's almost impossible to go back. It is literally like a Faustian tale.
Hmm.
They're so close to getting their dream, which is to, exterminate the native Palestinians from Gaza. But the irony of this is, like in a Faustian tale, is that they have completely trashed their image internationally and probably forever. The
They
brand
don't
of
care though. Yeah.
they don't care, but they will care. And over time, they will have their image and their brand is as badly damaged as Germans were after World War II. I would say 100%.
Yeah.
And that's saying something for a tiny little country with like 9 million or whatever, 10 million people or whatever, to have that level of derision from the international community. You've really achieved something extraordinary there. You
Good
know,
job, guys.
look at, I mean, look, Nazi Germany. It took, a whole world war with all of these superpowers fighting each other, and millions of men lost on all sides and fighting for like 6, 7 years or whatever. I mean, that's what it took to get that result. This is just completely unbelievable if you think about it in proportion, and it's definitely biblical.
It's
You know,
deserved too. They're fighting an unarmed populace. The average
yeah,
person in Palestine makes less than like $15,000 a year if they're lucky. That's a great job there. These people
yeah,
have nothing.
yeah. They
And
don't.
they have
They're
no
low.
government. This government, they say they elected Hamas. They didn't elect Hamas, just like we
Well,
don't elect people here.
they did have an election when Hamas came to power after in 2005, but it was funny because Israel said, "Oh, we're not going to talk to the Palestinians until they have elections," and they said, and they wanted Hamas, or I'm not sure, they didn't think Hamas would win on that round, or that somehow they miscalculated, and then Hamas won. And everyone was shocked, and then Israel said, "We're not talking to the Palestinians because Hamas won." So they're begging for elections, funding elections. Then the wrong people get elected, and then because they only Israel started Hamas to break up the PLO,
Yes.
basically. That's why and this
That's
is the
not a
American
conspiracy theory.
and
That's
the
very
Americans were
provable.
behind this as well. It was the Americans and Israel, the same thing. But what happened was Hamas grew. They started growing bigger and more popular than was expected, but they had a lot of Israeli moles and people, plants inside the organization for a long time, for decades. They used to fire rockets in Israel. Would have their people fire rockets into Israel.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's been
and
happening for decades.
Israelis admit this. Some people, Mossad people, interviews that they admit this, but what happened was they did these very, very violent purges in Gaza of these what they suspected to be traitors, moles, and whatnot. And it took a long time to do this purge, and they had to have compartmentalization in terms of information. I mean, it's really, imagine that you're being bared down by this awesome digital intelligence system that Israel has. The how you communicate, everything just matters at that
Mhm.
point. And then the final purge came probably in the last 6 or 7 years, whereby Israel lost a lot of the assets it had within Hamas, that it could know its every move before it happened, and even direct and steer activities to some degree. That those days are no longer happening, and this is when you saw this card being played here with after October 7th. And so this is the final solution for this Palestinian problem they have in Gaza. Israel also, the Knesset just voted to annex the West Bank yesterday. I mean, that didn't get any news in America.
It
And
did.
Trump famously said, "No, no, they're not going to do it. I won't let it happen." Well, it's happening, Donald. And he's not going to do a thing to stop it. He can talk all he wants, but Israel's going to do what it's going to do, and Donald Trump can pretend or not or whatever, say, "Oh, don't do that," or "We don't like that," or that's too much. But at the end of the day, he's bought and paid for by Mary Madelson and the Israeli lobby. That's 300 million plus the total of 600 million into GOP coffers in the 2024 cycle from all offices plus the president's
Ton of
about
money.
600 million, maybe more. I might be underestimating, but yeah, that's a lot of influence right there. By the way, Trump could have won without that money quite
Yeah,
easily. He didn't
easily.
need it.
Yeah.
The fact he took it, nah, now they own you. So, but so that's one of the issues
So
there.
you don't agree with the people that are saying he's going to backdoor Israel and cut him off? I mean,
No,
I don't either at this point.
I
Like
don't.
5
No,
years ago, maybe it's a possibility, but watching things of today, I don't.
just
I
the
always let
opposite.
things play out. I don't predict. I just let things play out.
What Trump is doing now is with Netanyahu, they're planning to hit Iran before Christmas. So this will happen in the next 2 months. So they're going
Agreed.
to
Yeah.
start. They're going to restart a war with Iran. If it doesn't happen before Christmas, it might get delayed till March. I don't know, but that's exactly why this ceasefire has also been to try to rebuild the Patriot missile integrated missile defense arrays, plus all of the other missile systems they have. Because if they attack Iran, there will be a counterstrike by Iran, and it will entail missiles, and many of them, and they will hit and pound Tel Aviv again and targets throughout Israel. And it could be worse than before. And so the U.S.'s plan in this is to then back up Israel and then do bombing raids on Iran.
Mhm.
Why are they starting a war with Iran? I mean, Trump did a victory lap, didn't he? Saying that's the end of their nuclear program. Oh, it's not now. No,
Right.
because they need total capitulation. Because as long as Iran is free and has the ability to defend itself and possibly defend another country, it's viewed as a threat to Israel. So Israel's allowed to, pursue its Greater Israel project, so long as it helps to achieve Anglo-American geopolitical objectives. And historically, this has always been the quid pro quo.
Yeah.
So the U.S. is happy, let Israel go. They're the U.S. and the Anglo-European proxy in the region to help control West Asia and effectively Eurasia from this hub. It's also obviously the religious and spiritual aspects, a very important thing to control in Jerusalem. Of course, we can
Sure.
acknowledge that, but just from a purely geopolitical and an energy point of view, the energy play is not as important as it was 30 years ago when the US went on the petrodollar,
That's right.
or 50 years ago. I'm getting old. Um,
You're aging,
50,
Patrick.
I know, 50 years ago. So, but there's other things that are important. And this segues to what you were saying about the financial future of the Middle East. And so the main stakeholders there being Saudi Arabia, the UAE, United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, the GCC countries, Bahrain. Jordan is actually in deep trouble
Yeah.
because
They need a
Jordan,
bailout.
they've always need a bailout. They don't have any natural resources per se, not to the level that the other GCC countries are well endowed with. Qatar, Saudi Arabia, I mean, they're loaded. They've got more gas and oil. So they've reinvested into finance, DFI, direct foreign investment, commercial. I mean, Dubai is a great success in sort of sucking in the wealth of the world into this small city state.
Oh, they
But
now
what
own boxing and golf. Like, people aren't paying attention. Like, I'm a big boxing fan. All the big boxing matches now have, guys with the Arab headdress sitting behind there, and they're the ones announcing the beginning. They own sports and entertainment. They're going to own sports and entertainment in America.
Yeah, and in Europe they practically
Complete
do.
control of soccer. Yeah, complete
Definitely
control.
in the UK massively. But what they have done is they have modernized a lot of key industries. One of them is a big investment into data centers and AI. So they have that plus in terms of building and infrastructure, high speed rails, high tech, very entrepreneur
Smart
friendly.
cities.
Yeah, smart cities, entrepreneur friendly business zones, tax-free zones, free ports everywhere. So they've done really well to use their oil and gas money to build an infrastructure that would make it a great Silk Road hub.
Yeah.
So what now that changes the whole dynamic because, as you say, Israel then it becomes a liability to long-term investment in the region. They're a problem. They attacked Qatar. That was the stupidest thing you can imagine, but they did
Terrible.
it to try to hit a Hamas negotiator. That's Israel's policy is to basically kill anybody that's in negotiations with. So then Netanyahu goes, "We don't have a negotiation partner. There's nobody to talk to because you killed them all." You
Yep.
killed them all, or they're in prison for life. Like Marwan Barghouti, for instance. They're all Palestinian future Nelson Mandelas have been killed, tortured, or serving life in prison with no chance of getting out. So that's their way of guaranteeing that the world cannot focus. Because one of the successful things about the emancipation of Black South Africa was they had a figurehead. They had
Yeah.
Nelson Mandela. Titular head of the ANC, freedom fighter. He had that. You could put your focus on a personality, and that goes such a long way when you're selling the issue internationally. Palestine doesn't have that
Hmm.
because they've all been killed, and Israel's strategically done that. By the way, they've strategically, male and female, they have imprisoned, tortured, driven out, whatever. So but for the Gulf, the future of other countries coming in with big money, it all depends on stability. And you
Yeah.
can't. If Israel can turn around and hit any of these countries if they're not like sufficiently subordinate to them, then basically that's bad for the future. People are not going to want to park their money there. Or if the U.S. is egging on Saudi Arabia to fight Yemen for the last 15 years and then the Yemenis are sending drones to blow up Aramco oil facilities. That's not good for long-term investment, is it?
Right.
So why was the U.S. Waging a proxy war against Yemen? Because they knew Yemen could provide a threat to Israel. That's why. So everything in the region, every skirmish, every war, the Syrian war was for Israel. They needed regime change to fall in Damascus so that they could
You
basically.
called that accurately on this podcast 3 months in advance. So for the listeners, I want you to know that
I'll
your
tell you. I'll send you a video clip, Eric. I called it in 2012.
oh wow.
I predicted the series of events that unfolded in the last 18 months.
I mean, you were deadly accurate with that.
Yeah. So everything's for Israel. All of the U.S. naval positions in the Red Sea, the Mediterranean, the Iranian, the Persian Gulf, Diego Garcia, Incirlik Air Force Base, Cyprus, all of it, U.S. occupying northeastern Syria, all of that. That is a whole sophisticated array is for one thing and one thing only. It's not to deter the Soviet Union anymore. No, it's to defend Israel
Hmm.
and to support Israel. What we spend, they talk about the direct aid for the last 2 years, I think 21 billion or something like that, additional on top of what we normally give Israel. if you tallied up the cost of all of the moving the military around and manning all these military positions in Iraq, in Syria, in Turkey, etc., Bahrain, the Fifth Fleet, and all this, you start adding all. They got bases in Saudi, Kuwait, UAE, you add
Completely surrounding Iran. I mean, we have bases.
Qatar
Yeah.
as well surrounding Iran. That's all for Israel, all of it.
It's about
So
$1 trillion.
everything we have, it's so much money, and you can't even calculate what the true cost is. All for one little tiny country in the region that is basically killing people just completely, with extreme prejudice,
Mhm.
and so we're doing that, and potentially putting the U.S. at risk, and so that brings us back to the Trump was talking about putting boots on the ground in Gaza. Well, there's already boots on the ground in Gaza. There were mercenaries on the ground with the fake Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, the GHF. Anthony Aguilera, the whistleblower, he blew the whistle on all that with Tucker and so forth. But the U.S. have troops on the ground in Israel now. Donald Trump's talking about putting U.S. troops to sort of patrol and peacekeeping in Gaza. The last time the U.S. put boots on the ground in Levant was during the Reagan administration, and that didn't end well.
Right.
The bombing of the Marine barracks in Beirut. And there's a lot of questions over who did that bombing, by the way. That's still very much an open question. Knowing what we know about Israeli intelligence these days and how deeply they penetrate ISIS and all these other groups and so forth. So
Boko Haram, we're going to talk about that in a minute.
Israel would love to have a U.S. dead soldier. So they're creating a casus belli. They would love it because the American media would rev up into war mode, and it would be, back Israel. Israel is look at our boys now. Da, da, da. We shouldn't be there.
Not at all.
And there should be no Israeli soldiers in Gaza either,
Yep.
and no Israeli settlers, which they're lining up to build settlements. Now they want to they're subdividing Gaza into quadrants. That's what the whole GHF scam was, and that's because Israel is planning to annex it. So it's like, kill and ethnically cleanse the native population. Where is this admissible and acceptable anywhere on the planet? In the
Nowhere.
last,
Only there.
only there. It's it's just, to me, such a betrayal, and
And all I keep hearing about is how beautiful the beaches are, and we're going to be building hotels there. Like that's not what that land is for. Those people have been there for thousands of years. Their bloodlines go back thousands of years into that region.
They do. They're Semitic.
Imagine if Texas did this to Mexico, right? Like, hey, we love the Mexican border. We're just going to go ahead and wipe out 30 miles deep, kill every Mexican, turn it into casinos.
Or Baja.
So different.
Or Baja. Yeah,
Yeah.
just like ethnically cleanse Baja and turn it into, Las Vegas. Turn it into Utah. That's not gonna. It's no good. So yeah, I mean, the Palestinians are actually Semitic.
Yes, I talk about that on Twitter all the time. Like, there's nothing more anti-Semitic than killing Semites. They're descendants of Shem, clearly descendants of Shem.
European settlers who settled Israel in 48 and before and after, they are not Semites.
They're interlopers.
They're not. They're European settlers. That's it.
Yep.
So like
You've so read funny. This book, I assume. I don't know why I have this next to me, but
Shlomo Sands. Yeah, this is a Jewish scholar.
Yeah, an Israeli Jewish scholar.
Israeli Jewish scholar. So Elian Pape, Shlomo Sands, these are all brilliant scholars who have documented all of this, and it's very, you might not like it if it goes against what your belief system is or what you think is the actual.
You're not going to like it if you're not going to, but you need to read it. That's the thing.
Yeah, it's very good academic work. It's these are proper historians. These are the best historians in Israel because they're telling the truth, and they're so good that they're not allowed. They get kicked. Many of them kicked out of Israel, and they can't pursue their careers there. So they're in the UK or France. I don't know if Shlomo Sands is in France or not, but I think so.
Last time I heard, he was still in France because he's not allowed in Israel after writing that book.
Yeah, Elian Pape is a distinguished academic at Exeter University in the UK, and there's a whole bunch of others we could name as well. But so I mean, and unfortunately, those books aren't being read or I mean, every congressman and senator should.
I keep it right here in my studio, because oftentimes I'll say things and a guest will be like, "That's not true," and I'm like, "Read this book."
Right, and
And
also
it's
if
not just that book. Like, read history. This stuff is biblical, by the way. I mean,
yes,
understanding what a Semite is, a descendant of Shem, a descendant of Noah, flooded the region, right? You have all the empires of the region were Semites. They were
yeah,
Persians, they were Babylonians, they migrated into that area.
yep,
And then you have
and
the whole biblical breakdown of Israel and Judea and the difference between the two, and that both of them fell away from the will of God, and God revoked the Abrahamic promise from those people because they broke the covenant that was made with God. They went to multi gods, they went to paganism, child sacrifice, Moloch worship again. It's all very well documented in the Bible,
mm.
which has never been proven to be historically inaccurate ever.
Well, that the proliferation of the multitude of pagan gods and so forth, that basically was the thing that kicked off the launch of Islam.
That's
Was that
correct.
at the Kaaba, and they used to have a giant world fair of different gods. That was like, and everybody would come to sell the gods and buy the gods and so forth, and that helped to launch the Islamic movement on the
Yep.
back of that. So this is all like what Shlomo Sands in these books is really important because it's your biblical history is right there
Mhm.
in those books. So it's a really good cross reference to the Bible, which itself is a historical, a great historical book with lots of references to many things, people, places, times, and so forth. Those Jewish scholars that are telling the truth about this, it jibes very, very accurately. And then you have the language groups, the Aramaic
Mhm.
language groups as well, and so forth. And you have to look at it's like the development of Arab culture has sprung out of that,
Yeah.
sprung out of early Christianity. The same people have always been there,
Yeah.
but they haven't always been Christians, and many became Muslim, but they're the same people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
there have
many
been
still are Christians. People negate this fact. The Middle East has a lot of Christians.
less so than previously, but all these Israeli-backed wars that on their wish list since the 1990s and the Project for a New American Century, or go back to the Lebanese Civil War, that was
Mhm.
Israel. These all these have driven Christians out of the region.
Well, at that time, Lebanon was about 65% Christian.
It wasn't 65%. It would probably be more like
40? I know last time I looked, it's still
50.
40.
It was very close to 50-50. But there are a lot of Christians, very well rooted, very well established, multi-denominations as well,
Yes.
Maronites, Orthodox, it's very deep, deep. I mean, Lebanon's very much a Christian country as much as a Muslim country. There's no
Yeah.
doubt about that.
And the
Um,
2 play well in the sandbox there. You know,
yeah, there's no
yeah,
problems there. I lived in
no.
Lebanon. I worked in Lebanon. No issues. Not no, I didn't see any issues. I didn't have any issues with that.
You study history, and the one thing that boggled my mind when I first got into Israel years ago was studying that region before the creation of Israel. Totally
Right.
peaceful. When we hear politicians going thousands of years of violence, that's not true historically. That
No, it's
region
not.
was very peaceful with Muslims, Jews, and Christians living in perfect harmony in the same neighborhoods. They weren't even
Yeah,
separated.
yeah,
It's kind
that's
of
a
like
lie.
what the American dream should be, is to have people of all these different cultures that live together. That actually existed before Israel was created as a nation.
Yeah, you have Jews living there
Yeah.
continuously. Mizrahi or Eastern Jews, as they're known, or Sephardic Jews, but they stayed, and they were
Mhm.
always living in Jerusalem and praying next to the Muslims and the Christians, and it was always coexistence, always. And it was only until Theodor Herzl and this Zionist movement began that the problem started.
Yep.
And then 48, it just was a catastrophe. And yeah, so that they've always been the region. And there's been Jews, long rooted Jewish communities in Jerusalem, in Damascus, in Beirut,
Yep.
in Baghdad, in parts of Iraq, in Iran. There's still a Jewish community in Iran.
And they're
Even
actually Semitic. They're actually Israelites. Their bloodlines are of Israel. They are
but
not
they are Semitic
European.
in terms of their haplogroups, many of them, and language groups and so forth. But yeah, you could make the other argument as well. But the point is, they're from the region, so they don't. Zionism is not a thing for them because they're
Right.
like, what is this homeland thing? Like we're here, we're Jews, we study the Torah, we pray. That's what we've been doing for 2,000 years. Like, where are you guys coming from with all this Zionism business? That's why you see a lot of Orthodox Jews, especially in America, in New York, many of them coming out in droves against Israel.
Yeah, very much so.
Because they see it as an apostasy to their own scriptures.
It is an
And
apostasy to their scriptures.
yeah,
That's 100% correct.
yeah, and you're right about, you see the thing that you see guys like clowns like Ted Cruz, and Tucker just did the world such a great favor.
God, he could have really kicked his teeth in though. If Tucker actually knew scripture, he could have ended that argument in 5 minutes.
He could, and Tucker's he's too polite to his fault. But the fact he did that interview and exposed Cruz and exposed all the fallacy of this kind of fake interpretation of Christian doctrines in the Bible, which what Tucker did there was such a great favor to humanity, because it showed you what a shyster and a snake oil salesman people like Ted Cruz are. That the Bible commands us to, support and defend Israel, and Tucker's like, really?
Where?
And he could have done a little bit worse on Ted. I would have hoped, but he didn't. He did okay, but not hard enough. I agree with you on that, Eric. But it's not in the scripture.
No,
It's
in the Schofield Bible.
It doesn't say anything about that in Genesis, Abraham's seed, and so you spoke about that before.
Yep.
The new covenant, if you're a Christian, is the covenant that Jesus offered.
Yes,
that's the new chosen people. That's the new inheritance of the covenant, right? That's the whole basis of Christianity.
Yeah.
So what's Cruz talking about? And he identifies as a Christian. I really can't.
His father's a pastor, and his father's also an apostate. I mean, I've listened to a lot. I've met the guy, and I've listened to a lot of his sermons. He's very John Hagee-ish.
What, Cruz's father is still alive, or no?
Yeah.
Was he the Cuban?
Theoretically, we don't know where. We don't really know where these people come from, but yeah, he's a pastor. He's a megachurch pastor.
Okay,
and he teaches tens of thousands of people this false doctrine.
Yeah,
which it's interesting to watch the whole evangelical dispensational point of view completely contradict itself. And by the way, this was not you mentioned Herzl. The idea of Christian Zionism began with Napoleon Bonaparte when he freed the Jews from Italy. He was the one who spoke it into there, and he was clearly a Jesuit puppet. But at the same time, you have Herzl and Moses Hess, and
Herzl was an atheist.
Yeah. So, well, in his diary, he said he wished he was a Catholic. In Herzl's diary, he literally said he wished that he was a Catholic. He met with the Pope 14 times.
And that's the father of
Zionism.
Does that make any sense?
No, none of it makes any sense. So we're waiting for a second Messiah. Like, there is already a Messiah. He came, and these guys who preach to Christians every Sunday and fly around the world in their private jets and Mercedes-Benz are not happy with what God gave us. Israel was chosen to give birth to the Messiah. That was the chosen people. You were chosen to be the bloodline of the Son of God. He came. Now the new chosen people are those who follow his teachings. Like, this is very clear.
That's clear in the New Testament. It's very clear. So, I mean, if you identify as a Christian, you should at least acknowledge these basic truths in your faith. But there's 10 times more or 100 times more Christian Zionists on this planet than Jewish Zionists. That's the main problem. So they are kind of propping up this movement, this ideology, all of this horror that we're forced to watch and witness, all this human suffering is really being underwritten by Christian Zionists, many in America, probably the most dominant faction in America. And people who think the Schofield Bible is like some legitimate, version of the Bible with all its little notations telling you what to think about everything. Unbelievable.
Even the O has a little dot in the middle, which is a satanic symbol of the dot in the circle. Like, if you studied that occultism, you'll understand that. It's very interesting. But I did a whole 3.5-hour episode on Christian Zionism. I'm a Christian, so I guess I'm non-denomination. I don't believe in denominations at all. I guess I'm solo scriptura.
Do you have a preferred translation of the Bible? Because that's a big issue, actually.
Geneva. Yeah, I read the Geneva quite a bit.
Okay, all right.
It's difficult, but when I read them all, the beautiful thing about the internet is you can read scripture and get all the different variations and translations in the click of a mouse. I prefer paper, so I have copies of them right behind me. I have 14 different translations. I don't read the NIV. I read the NIV for public prayer and things like, because people can understand it.
Yes, yes, yeah.
But
In
I'll even
England, there's a lot of NIVs in the Church of England. If you go to different churches, I visit a lot of old churches just when I do hiking. I'll
mhm.
go into a church and I'll read, see what Bibles they have, and it's very interesting. But it's very much very popular, the New International um,
It's because it's
translation.
watered down. It's like the Twitter version of the Bible. It's
Yeah.
like very, very watered down. Yeah, but the reason I stick with Geneva is because in the Armor of God, it's the only translation that throws in worldly governors.
Mm,
So we battle not against flesh and bone, but powers and principalities and worldly governors who do evil in high places. After that, it was
Principalities and worldly governors. Okay, I knew about
worldly
prince.
governors.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's true. That's, like I put a post out on Twitter today. I said, just a quick reminder, God gave dominion to the devil over the earth. He is going to put parameters around it, and that's not going to end until Christ returns at Revelation. So until that point in time, assume everything is, can be, or will be corrupted through the system, and put your faith in God, not in men. And I see this all the time. Trump's going to save us. This guy's going to save us. Jesus is going to save you. That's it. That's the message that overwhelmingly should be spoken. I hope these other guys do great things. I really do. But as a biblical Christian, it's difficult for me to get past, like, there's nowhere in the Bible where it says we'll have a true golden age and sovereignty on earth before Christ returns. That actually is called a false golden age and a delusion before revelation actually occurs. It gives me
Right.
comfort knowing that, because like that's why I take my relationships with people like you and everyone else very, very intimately, because we should have conversations about the different translations of the Bible, what it
Yeah.
means. I only understand it because I've dug through 28 different translations dating back to really like 400 AD.
Mm,
And little tiny words make a huge difference in
yes.
translation, especially
Yes.
Hebrew and Greek.
Massively. It can change the whole meaning of the passage
Yeah.
and the focal point of a whole sections and verses. But yeah, I mean it's I only revisited recently in recent years to revisit reading, and I'm just there's just so much good knowledge and enlightenment and insights and throughout the Bible, Old and New Testament. That it's absolutely incredible.
Best
Yeah.
history in the book is the Old Testament. There's
Mm,
more history that has never been disproven and documented with official dates,
mm,
nothing dating back to antiquity, that is
mhm.
more accurate. The New Testament, I think, is a little different, right? It's more
It's
philosophical.
completely different. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. New covenant, new tone, new era. But, one thing that you can date back to the early church fathers is the end times began at the empty tomb.
mm,
Right when Christ took the right hand seat of God and ascended to heaven, that's when the end times began. So we
yeah.
don't know when they end. They already began. It's been
Y
2,000 years.
who's, on the end times eschatological points and also talking about the Antichrist, and all the what happens after that. The Islamic eschatology is fascinating,
Yes, it
and
is.
it very much mirrors a lot that's in Christianity. But there's a couple of scholars that are alive now who I've met and had the pleasure of talking at length to about this issue in Iran. One of them is from Trinidad and Tobago. He's from the Caribbean. His name
Hmm.
is Sheikh Imran Hussein, and he's a lot of stuff on YouTube. If you put in Sheikh Imran Hussein and eschatology end times, that's his kind of main specialty. And he translates today's geopolitics, including what's going on in Israel right now, in this bigger sort of including Og and Magog, and so he's translating biblical or Quranic eschatological end times into today's events, trying to guess what is going likely to happen next.
Hmm.
How is it going to change? How is it going to happen? He's absolutely a brilliant. I think he
I'm
has a
so
P.
interested in that. That's like my free time. I love looking at different eschatology of where we are
Fascinating.
when you
It's
overlap it with history. I think I'm pretty accurate. I'll go. I'm not going to bore you with mine, but I think we're very, very close to the point where the world will marvel after the beast. I think we're very close to that.
well,
End times aren't scary. Remember,
if
they're
not already. I mean, but the AI,
mhm.
the Islamic eschatology is so interesting because they go into extreme detail and it's almost like they're talking about the media. It's
Yeah.
almost like they're saying like the world of illusions or the deception, the Dajjal system. The Dajjal system. It's like a system. The Dajjal, the Antichrist has this. The Dajjal has this system, and it's a system media deception of inversion. So by that point, what everybody believes is fake, and everyone, if you show them the truth, they'll say that's a lie.
The great delusion in Second Thessalonians. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's so much beautiful overlap. I find it's great for cross-referencing, just to get a little more, because also in his Islamic scriptures, they do more to describe the spirit world, or the jinn. They call them the
The
jinns,
jinn. Yeah.
but we also have in the Bible similar.
Yes. Demons
And
in the Bible.
yeah, so they have, but then they have these different class system within the jinns. You have bad jinns, you have working class jinns, you have and then you have like jinn priests and so forth,
So
and
we
then
get the term, it's all ginned up.
something like that. But it's fascinating just to compare between the three Abrahamic faiths. There's more detail in certain ones about certain things than in others. But if you can cross reference them a little bit about some of these types of
And
issues,
you should, yeah.
you get a little more let's say texture
Mm.
on certain things, that and more elucid in certain areas than it would be in another, talking about the same thing. So it's, I mean, Tucker Carlson talked about, he was asked at a Turning Point USA rally, must have been like, I don't know, a year ago, I can't remember. He was asked about UFOs. He said, are there aliens? And Tucker said, he said, well, he saw there were, you're talking about spirits that have been here since time immemorial. It's in the Bible. He said that's what he believes, that
Yeah, I
what
do
we
too.
would call aliens. That's kind of what you're talking about there. So yeah, there's definitely a conversation within Christianity about this thing. But the bottom line is, my interest, of course, is in geopolitics and how this stuff is unfolding, and people
Well,
like
let's tie
Sheikh.
that together. Let's tie
Yeah.
Nigeria into this story, because
Okay.
that is the biggest story the world is not talking about. 50 to date, 52,000 Catholics and Christians have been murdered in Nigeria for their faith. Didn't, like you said before we started recording, this has been going on for a while. This has really ramped up since the ceasefire, which is
Mm,
suspicious to me.
very
Knowing that
suspicious.
it's being blamed on Boko Haram and ISIS.
Yeah.
ISIS, we like, it's not. If you're watching this and you think this is conspiratorial, do research. Like, every ISIS leader we've ever captured has been a member of Mossad. They absolutely control ISIS. Boko Haram is probably controlled by either us or MI6. Um, it, it- we don't know.
Yeah.
They're intelligence operations.
It seems like a cutout organization that gets used like a tool.
You got to have the
To
bad guy. Got to have the boogeyman to control
look
the dialectic. You have to have it.
look at the guy in charge in Damascus. That's the
Mhm.
founder of Al Qaeda in Syria, Ahmed al Sharar al Jalani, and he was deputy head for al Baghdadi of ISIS. And I mean, seriously, they let him out of Camp Buka in Iraq, and all of a sudden, he goes through and starts Al Qaeda in Syria and ISIS, and come on.
Now he's
And
the president of Syria.
he lets Israel march into the Golan Heights, doesn't fire a shot, doesn't say anything, says, "Oh, sorry. Do you need anything? Can we bring you tea and sandwiches?" to the Israelis. I mean, it's a joke. So a lot of people believe he's a longtime Israeli asset
Yeah.
and an American asset. And I would say yes, 100%. And so yeah, so Boko Haram, Al Qaeda, ISIS, these are all cutout organizations. They're like chess pieces on the board that you can move around to make things happen. And while there has been sectarian violence in Nigeria for a very long time, and that you can blame the British for starting all this, as a post-colonial disaster, just like in the
Hmm.
Middle East, just
Yeah.
like in Pakistan and India. So we won't go there, but
Pakistan and India is so clear. Like, that couldn't be more clear. That's England.
suffice to say, it's a post-British Empire disaster, and leaving sectarian strife and fighting in its wake. Okay, fine, but the fact that it's grabbing headlines is a total distraction about what's happening. And just as public opinion's boiling over against Israel over Gaza, it's really boiling over. And then all of a sudden they say no. And if you look at the Israeli accounts on social media, they're saying, why aren't you talking about Sudan? Why aren't you
That's
talking about
exactly right.
Nigeria, you're focusing so much. Even people like Bill Maher, I don't know if he said that, but it's the type of thing he would say. Why aren't you talking about these other places? Why are you so focused on calling this a genocide? Well, yeah, I told you about the numbers before.
Mhm.
I see a flattened hellscape of a city that used to have 2 million people living in it. I'd say that's just about the most damn near best example of a genocide in our lifetime,
Yep.
if not of all time. And it's happening in the Holy Land as well, makes it even more significant. So I do
I
view
think
the
even
Niger
Tel
yeah,
Aviv Levin actually put that out yesterday. Mr. Israel everything. Think he said, "Why isn't no one talking about the 52,000 dead in Niger?" And I don't remember this. I think he was
yeah,
one of them. For sure, it's the Israeli shills though. That I didn't even think about that until just now. They have been tweeting that out quite a bit, and they should be. Like, so
yeah,
I'm not going to say like we should be talking about that. So I'm not going to say that's a bad thing, but it is absolutely taking pressure off of a ceasefire that never occurred,
yeah, and it's
appearingly.
52,000 over what, how many years?
52,000 this year from what I read.
Well, we'll have to see. I mean, there's also genuine civil war type violence going on between Nigeria has 3 main ethnic groups, and this is ongoing power struggle between them, and the the Igbos, the Yorubas, and the Hausa, and some of these groups are more Christian and more Islamic. You've got that schism as well, and then you add in all the subterfuge with foreign intelligence agencies, gun running, fake ISIS, fake Boko Haram, and it just stirs it up. And
Mhm.
they can create a civil war. You know, our governments have the ability to, with gangs and counter gangs, which
Yep.
is a long established method of destabilization and getting people to fight amongst each other in former British colonies like Kenya and Nigeria and many others. Angola, that's a former Portuguese colony. They used the same tactics there during the Cold
Tactics
War.
began in the French Revolution.
Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
yeah, exactly. There's a British major named Frank Kitson who wrote two famous field manuals, which you can get on the internet. And this is seriously fascinating reading. One's called Gangs and Counter Gangs. The other is called Low Intensity Operations. And it's basically chapter and verse. And this is the technology they used in Northern Ireland with the Republicans versus the British, and in Kenya with the Mau Mau Rebellion. And it literally shows you how to go in and divide up and create fake cells to attack, to get people to fight amongst each other. It's very well
Hmm.
organized. And this is the manual. That's the Bible. That is the basis for Al Qaeda, for ISIS, and everything. Gangs and counter gangs. Download the PDF.
I
You
will.
can
Yeah, I just
read
wrote
it.
it down.
Read it for free. You literally have the book there. That's the handbook. It even goes in to identify the political parties, government, local positions, how to subvert, how to infiltrate, like graphs. It's so detailed, and
It's
that's
amazing to me in the world that we live in that anyone assumes that anything is organic. All this stuff is out there. Like the
yeah,
art of war is out there. Like,
yeah,
I don't believe that was written by Sun Tzu, considering it was published 2,000 years afterward. However, but we have all these manuals. These guys have disclosed tactics that exist. It's easy to see.
yeah,
People always say, well, what do you mean that's fake? And it's not fake. People really die. The problem is they're on payrolls. So if your job as a general of one of these, terrorist groups is to sit tight, train your guys, fill them with bloodlust and hate, and just bottle them up. And then when you get paid for the final go, you open up the gates and they get to do what you've trained them to do for years. This is no different than any military tactic dating back hundreds of years, if not thousands. Thousands is probably harsh. They weren't that organized, but hundreds of years this has been going on.
yeah. And and where they can't do it, if a country is resistant to this or immune to it, like Yemen, what do? They try to overthrow them. They bomb them. They try to crush them.
Hmm.
So Yemen being a true ex-colonial independent country that can't be infiltrated and manipulated, just because they have a very strong sort of core, socio-political, religious core there, and they have a long history of self-governance. and that the British couldn't control these Arab tribes are just too independent.
When they're
And
genetically in tune with the land, they haven't been infiltrated by outsiders. Like, people don't realize that
yeah,
this cultural invasion of Europe and America is designed to destroy the culture.
oh yeah, and
If there's
who's
no culture, you won't fight for your land. In Yemen, those people have been
yeah.
Yemenis for thousands of years, or
So I
whatever they were called previous, but they
so
will defend that land.
so I will send you a report, which I have authored and will be out in the first glossy magazine in the UK, and it's about what's driving immigration flows into Europe, and my analysis through academic study, 8,000 word
Wow.
report. NATO and Israel are
Sure.
driving all the main migrant flows into Europe come from countries that have either been attacked, destabilized, or sanctioned.
Mhm.
Period. And the most obvious being Libya, because that was the pressure valve that kept sub-Saharan African immigration in Africa. And when Gaddafi was overthrown, Israel, Libya collapsed as a state due to NATO at the behest of Israel and the neocons. Ultimately, that opened the immigration floodgates into Europe. That was by design. And then what Israel does, very clever, they then go and back the far right in Europe to get them riled up against immigrants
Yep.
and Muslims. So NATO and Israel, driving the immigrants into Europe, and then they fund the parties and the Tommy Robinsons of the world
Yep.
to literally funding them to basically rile up the population to get people to fight each other, and by doing so, supporting Israel.
Yep.
And Netanyahu specifically says, "We're fighting your fight." He's all, "We are guarding the gates of Vienna," using the historical reference there. And it's so obvious when you look at it. So NATO, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya, a couple of others. Yugoslavia. That's another one from the Balkans. And then get white people and white nationalists and whatnot in Europe are like, no, we're being invaded, but they will, but we support Israel. I'm like, you guys, and we support NATO. I'm like,
Yeah.
are you guys serious? You
It's
really haven't worked this out yet?
The Matrix is the most entertaining and scary thing in the world. It honestly
So
is, because
so I,
Hyas is the
I I've
largest purveyor of this.
I've documented this really, really specifically and really well.
When does
So
that come out?
that'll come out probably in November, maybe first week of December at latest.
I want to
But
see. I want to read
that's
that.
a keep. It's going to be a keeper. It's a keeper. But I will release the text anyway after it's published online. But I mean, other people have done pieces of this. I just brought the whole thing together. But um, like, I mean,
So you're
it
going to
just
articulate my kind of sandbox schematic of just noticing throughout the world that wars are started over false pretense in the Middle East,
mm,
bombs are dropped, refugees are created,
yep,
NGOs, specifically Catholic and Jewish NGOs, bring
yes,
them from the Middle East to Europe and to America. They get paid a
100%.
lot of money to do it. They infiltrate our culture, weaken our culture, make it easier for us to get steamrolled by tyranny, and the cycle just continues to repeat.
Well, the last bit you've added there, I didn't really get into that part. I'm just looking at the mechanisms that started it.
There's Article 2 for you. What are
Well,
the
yeah,
end results?
yeah. I mean, it's just kind of
I mean, we
horrific.
just
But
had a Diwali celebration in my neighborhood in Texas. Okay. I'm not
listen,
okay with that. I don't care what anyone says either. I'm not okay with the president lighting a Diwali candle either. I'm
yeah.
not.
I mean, well, that's a Hindu kind of,
I get it.
yes, festival of light. I mean, Diwali's not that. I've been to a Diwali festival. It's not too bad. As festivals go, it's pretty good. And the food's not bad. But anyway, that's not we're digressing.
Yeah.
But yeah, the culture
I'm the
wars.
digressor though. Blame it on me because
Yeah,
I'm
but
living in it.
yeah, so you get the point, though. You get the point that
Very
we
much
got
so. Yeah.
we got to like trace back and see how these things happened. It's very important because otherwise we just like bang our heads against the walls and butting heads against people that might actually be our allies. If in another in another dimension perhaps, but I don't want to get too deep into it. But like
The
the
truth
fact
is, most of these refugees from war don't want to go to Europe or America. They're actually fleeing violence.
they're fleeing economic deprivation.
Yeah.
That's been brought on their land by us and
Yeah.
by at the direction of neocons and the Israeli lobby and so forth.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the southern border, different story, but I could make the same argument about CIA's destabilization efforts in Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador,
Oh, 1,000%.
Central America, that's driving migrant flows up through the southern border. It's kind of the same phenomenon. And in where's Fox News on that issue? You never hear Fox say the CIA overthrew anybody.
Never,
It's like
never.
it doesn't exist.
No, it was
So, like,
organic. It was the
for that
people wanted
reason,
change.
so I'm sort of nominally conservative, but when it comes to actual documenting real history, the left do a much better job, at least the old left. The Chris
Yes.
Hedges of the world, the Michael Parenti, and look in all the countries that our government overthrew in our hemisphere, and you look at the migrant flows that are attached to that. I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah, I mean,
It,
everyone in the world should read Confessions of an Economic Hitman. That literally should
perfect.
be reading in school. You
John
should read
Perkins.
that book. John Perkins was I don't know how he's
That
still alive after telling that story, but
that should be required reading
yes.
for every journalist, for everybody. It's just one of those sort of collection of maybe, I don't know, whatever, half a dozen books. That's one of them.
Yep.
That's one. You have to read that. To then you can sort of build your worldview on some of those, important little chunks of reality there that make up our history. Instead, we don't get that. We get, oh, no, look at Maduro, the evil dictator. Do you know how much
So,
damage
an
we've done
evil
to,
dictator. It's always an evil dictator. Yeah.
Maduro, the narco state, Venezuela? Venezuela's not a narco state.
No.
The biggest drug dealers in our hemisphere traditionally are the CIA and the DEA.
Always.
Yeah, and working with the cartels.
Yep.
Working with the cartels.
They put him up
So,
front as patsies. They're the fall guy.
and bottom of the list will be Venezuela, and definitely not Maduro or Chavez. Okay, they don't need to run drugs. They have oil.
A
They
ton
have
of it.
they have the second largest provable reserves of oil in the world, but we're trying to prevent them from shipping it. That's what we've been doing
Under
for
the
years.
guise of trying to protect Guyana, right?
Yeah. Do
Who
you really?
Venezuela is certainly gonna take Guyana's oil. Like
Do you
that's
know how
gonna,
much
but we want that oil.
they've got? Gold, they've got oil, they've got everything. But that's why we're sanctioning them. That's why we destroyed their currency. That's why we're embargoing their country, and we stole their state. We stole Sicko assets, and then Trump in his first term gave it to Juan Guaido. And then Juan Guaido did what happened to that money? Nobody knows. And so they just literally stole the state oil company off of Venezuela. And they're talking about it now. We need to get control of the resources down there. Look, what is this?
Those aren't our resources. I'm just going to reiterate that to people over and over again. That is not our resources, and this is how people die. This is, Iraq was cover for that as well, right?
And it's going to drive migration.
1,000%.
It's going to drive migration. You know what is Venezuela? It was such a good partner for oil for the United States. Guaranteed supply,
Yeah,
quality, price. I mean, and proximity is fantastic for the U.S. to buy product from Venezuela. What a great trading partner to have so close to your own country. Oh, nope, can't have that. Nope, 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 nope. We got to subdue them. Oh, the government's too socialist. That Venezuela is a hyper-capitalist country. They have massive social welfare programs for the poor
yeah.
in terms of education, housing, and that's not a bad thing. If the state's making money on the oil and they want to reinvest that into housing for and education, raise literacy rates and lower infant mortality rates and so forth, and have more food and cheap food available, subsidized food, subsidized fuel. I mean, that's not bad. Saudi Arabia has subsidized petrol. Other
This is
petrol.
what got Gaddafi killed in the end, right? He was doing the same kind of stuff in Libya.
All these countries, all these Gulf Emirate countries, GCC countries, you don't pay nearly what we pay for
And
fuel in
and
those
I still think
countries.
it's funny that people think that the regime change to the new economic system in Venezuela was organic, conducted by the Venezuela. Like, seriously, everyone out there, read Confessions of an Economic Hitman, and you will realize that no regime change in the world takes place without permission of the intelligence agencies and the apparatus globally.
Well, they did the Chavez one was an anomaly. Okay,
Really?
that was a blip on the radar screen. That's why Washington went nuts. because it is very much a Marxist, I would say, very much a Marxist inspired uh, revolution, if you will. So, unfortunately, that's just a reality, you know. But they never forgive them for that. So they've absolutely destroyed that country, sadly.
Well, so Venezuela, I didn't know that about Venezuela, actually. I thought that was another CIA conducted operation that was approved by us, because most of them
No,
are. I mean,
no,
everything else is that I
no.
know.
They tried to overthrow Chavez, and it failed. And there's a reason why it failed, because our intelligence services made a huge error, and all South American countries. So whenever there was a sort of military coup in Brazil, Argentina, and Chile, it's always by the officer class.
Yeah, always.
Okay, and the generals, all those countries train all their top officers in America at
Hmm.
Fort Benning in
Yeah.
Georgia or in other facilities. So U.S. already had a Trojan horse hand already into all these countries in the region. There's one country of all of these countries that the rich do not send their kids to the military, and that's Venezuela.
Huh.
So it's all working class. So Chavez had the support of the working class, and he controlled the military, and they couldn't do it. It's the only one. It's the only one.
Hmm.
They made a huge error there. They had two. They had a failed coup, two failed coups of Chavez and John Pilger, who's a great Australian journalist and documentary filmmaker. You probably heard of him.
Yes.
He did a phenomenal film documentary, and he was down there as well in Venezuela, and he passed away last year, the year 2 years ago. But he made the phenomenal documentary about Chavez and the failed coup. I mean, it's really fascinating. I remember reading about it when it happened, but just the backstory and what was going on behind the scenes is just amazing. How how that thing went down, and then it's kind of incredible political story.
So
But
what do you think is happening there now? Like, why
that-
out of nowhere we just, hey, through a few things have thrown me for a loop.
yeah.
Talking about Greenland and Canada annexing,
Y-
and
w-
now these are World Economic Forum economic zones from their
mhm.
2030 agenda. Like, you can go to wef.org and look at this. But why Venezuela now? This is not a drug running country, like, and that's very well known, actually.
No, Trump had two failed coups during his first term. That Mike Pence was doing the public relations for John Bolton, Elliot Abrams. These are ex retreads from Bush, neocons, and they failed twice. Very embarrassing during the first Trump term. Two failed coups, really bad.
In
a-
Venezuela.
in Venezuela. And then and Anya Parampil, who's Max Blumenthal's wife, has written probably the best book on. It's on my shelf. I forgot the title. Anya Parampil is Max Blumenthal's wife, and she's probably one of the best scholars on Venezuela. She wrote
Hmm.
a very good. I think it was called something coup, but and so that's an unsettled business for the sort of neocon contingent for Marco Rubio. They feel like they need to
They have
achieve
egg on
their
their face from the first.
regime, big egg on their face, and they also they want to maintain keep Venezuela offline. That mean they'll only allow them to develop or to use their oil if it's a government that's pro-U.S. And the problem in Venezuela is obviously, like most countries, run by four billionaires, but the government and the state still have control over a lot. Like in China, there's a lot of rich people in China. There's like 100 Bill Gateses in
Oh,
China, but
many, yeah.
as Jack Ma found out, you can't rise above the level of the state. That's the death. Then the state was like, nope, we're going to put you down at that point. You can make the money, you can do this, you can do that, but not that. So Venezuela has a socialist government, but it's a capitalist economy. But it does have a lot of social programs, as I said earlier.
Mhm.
And but for that reason, they're popular with the majority of the country, and there's a lot of working class people, and obviously they're going to be popular a government that does that.
Right.
And so US obviously has found it very difficult to crack that nut. And they pride themselves in to be able to crack any country they want. and they're determined to do it in Venezuela, and also to keep them from developing, because I guess it is still advantageous for U.S. oil producers not to have the competition. When you have a major
Oh,
producer
certainly. That
mostly out of the
close.
market, think of the price. It's kept the price high. That's why another benefit is Trump's oil supporters in Texas are happy that he's sanctioning Russia, because that's going to raise the price of oil, immediately
Yeah,
5%.
yeah, it did for $4 or $5 today. I was
Yeah,
in oil and gas. I still
just like
consult
that.
oil and gas companies. Yeah, in a
Yeah.
heartbeat.
So it does the swings and roundabouts of the energy sector. All these things are affected by this. So yeah, there's a pie, and obviously, if there's too many people that are dividing up that pie, the price goes down. And then you have to have agreements like OPEC, on production, and there's got to be cooperation, and all of a sudden that becomes complicated,
It's all
much
controlled.
much more complicated. So, and that's why they don't like Russia. Russia sits there outside of OPEC, but is probably the most influential oil producer in terms of helping to
Oh,
set the
certainly.
price, supply and demand. But you can't control them like you can these Gulf states that basically the royal families serve at the pleasure of the U.S. and the European powers.
Yeah.
The minute they're out of favor, you're done, pretty
Yeah,
much.
the moment they announced they would stop taking Russian oil, oil went up like 3.5 or $4 instantly.
Yeah.
It was just a complete spike
China and
instantly.
India, yeah,
Yeah,
and so they're trying to force Russia to accept whatever the terms are on the Ukraine thing, and all they're going to do is accelerate the conflict. And now
sure.
you're going to see Russia's going to go for it before Christmas, and it's going to be ugly. And then we're going to sit there in the West and scream, "Oh, look at Putin is dropping all these missiles, and why is he doing that? He's such an evil dictator."
Yeah,
So
after 4,000 have been lobbed into his borders too. I mean, that's we only hear one side of every story. It's pathetic. Thank you for doing what you do, by the way, because it's
yeah,
pathetic what our actual media does for millions of dollars. Look at the average salary of a Fox News or CNN anchor. These people make a lot of money doing the bidding of the hidden hand, if you will.
yeah,
But
yeah.
so you're thinking by Christmas time or maybe Q1 of 26, we see a reacceleration in Gaza, maybe even the West Bank, and we see Russia Ukraine heat up again.
And Iran,
Iran, yeah, that's right, Iran.
yeah,
Well, yeah, the Gaza hasn't stopped. I mean, I don't
yeah.
think
That
anyone thought that would.
that will just continue.
So they're
And
restocking for another bout with Iran, and Iran pummeled Israel the
they did.
last time. It was
They
a
did. The
pummeling.
U.S. bailed Israel out. The
Yeah,
U.S. bailed them out. And I think the reason the U.S. bailed them out is because I think Israel threatened to use a nuclear weapon against Iran. Trump said, "Oh, no, 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 don't do that. We'll take care of it. We'll do some B-52 or whatever bomber, and whatever the missiles were from the submarines that they fired in Iran." And I think honestly, that's the type of stuff you're dealing with on the back channel with
oh sure.
Israel. They will use nuclear blackmail. They should not be allowed. That's the biggest mistake the U.S. ever did, was allowing Israel to have nukes.
Oh, agreed.
Biggest historic
Ever.
mistake. They could just threaten everybody now, and it's like, you know,
And it's weird to me how partisan Americans are, right? Like I always talk about this all the time. 5 years ago, every conservative in America was completely against cashless society, digital ID, digital currency, and AI.
mm,
But then Trump gets in, and we're like, yes, we'll be the leader in all of those things. And they're
yeah.
just completely turned around.
Oh,
The
they
other
like
thing is,
cyber trucks. They're all driving cyber trucks at the beginning of the year.
yeah, electric vehicles now. We
Yeah,
hated
that
those, but now we like them because Elon's now the new dialectic good guy, right?
right.
There's no good guys. That's the one thing history proves resoundingly, especially the deeper you dig into the major wars. Like who you thought was a good guy is probably not. Who you thought was a bad guy, it definitely is
Mm,
not. And we have this strange dialectic about nuclear in the Middle East. Very weird. So it's totally okay for Iran or Israel to have. We don't even know how much nuclear armament we have. We have
2 or
no clue.
300 warheads, something like that.
It
Yeah,
puts them right behind. That puts them like near Pakistan level.
yeah.
They're larger than Pakistan. I think Pakistan's 180 or 175. So they're Pakistani ready for a nuclear war. So Pakistan can have nukes, Israel can have nukes, but Iran can't. Like, really think about that. What if, we had the Cuban Missile Crisis, so Russia and the whole thing. So what if, I don't know, what if Canada, this is total, total fallacy. Imagine Canada had nuclear weapons. We would, of course, be against it. but would Canadians be against it? So Iranians are like, hey, if you have them, we should have them, or no one should have them. And
If Canada's being threatened by the US, then maybe, yeah,
yeah,
you know, then it would be in their interest to have them.
it's just like we don't look at things black and white. We look at them from the narrative given to us by the media. And the
Mm.
narrative is pretty simple. If I'm put yourself in someone else's shoes. If I'm an Iranian and I've been attacked by everyone in that region, just like everyone has. There's no good guys in history. It just doesn't turn out that way. The good guys
But
get written out of history.
there's guys who are worse than others, come on.
Oh, of course. Yeah. No,
Yeah,
it's a level of depravity. Like
yeah.
there are certainly worse guys. There are good guys who did good things, but like there's been one good human being that's ever walked the earth, and he was actually God in a body. So other than that, they were all flawed
It's a
is a better term.
spectrum, it's a spectrum.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely some that are more evil than others.
Certainly. But put yourself in those shoes. If you were an Iranian, you would want nuclear weapons because that deters your
Absolutely.
neighbor. That's the whole purpose of nuclear. The whole entire nuclear buildup
Yeah,
was deterrent. Like
yeah, that's
if
what
we have them, we won't use them, but we have them, right?
Pakistan, India,
Yeah.
North Korea, yeah, balance. You don't have any, it's very, very stable in the binary, with the deterrence, theory at play there. So the same with Iran and Israel. Actually, it would be a perfect offset.
Yeah.
It'll probably lead to peace in the region, quite frankly.
I agree.
It's totally lopsided now, and it's allowing a gangster state to basically blackmail everybody else, including the United States.
And they're both
That's
gangster states. That's the other thing. Like Iran is not a pure country. They do their own bad things too.
well, yes and no. They're not as nearly as bad as they're demonized by the
Of
West.
course. Yeah.
So I've been to Iran, I've been to the Islamic Republic, and it's definitely not Europe, but there's a lot of European qualities to it, and it's very sophisticated society. They had an Islamic revolution, 1980, 1979, and it happened for a reason. It was because of just the massive corruption and the wealth gap and all of that stuff during the U.S. puppet Shah regime, and also the Israelis were deeply embedded into these
Yeah.
Shah's security services. The Savak were trained by Israel after the U.S. took off and left. Israel took over. No wonder they were brutal, and that led to an uprising. And so what it was that the pendulum swung hugely in one direction, and it swung back just as hard to the Islamic side, and that's just the way, that's how it goes.
Right.
And so it's a post-colonial result, basically. The US earlier had overthrown the Iranian government, installed their puppet monarch, and then things eventually went to pot, and then the pendulum swung back hard to Islamic revolution, and we also exacerbated that by backing Saddam Hussein to basically attack the Iranians for 8 years in
That's
the
right.
Iran-Iraq war, and that's actually the most important uh, uh, event in sort of defining the the Islamic revolution in society in Iran, was that war. They 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 got hit by chemical weapons. They lost 300,000 men. It was massive. It was bad for Iraq as well, but it was
Mhm.
worse for Iran. And Scud missiles landing in Tehran every day. So they saw the U.S. backing that, and that totally jaded their view of America, that war,
As it should. Yeah.
because they're not stupid. Whereas we're taught about that we weren't involved in it. Like
Right.
that's how we're taught about that war.
Right.
So we're dumber than they are when it comes to history. And the last thing Americans ever want to do is blame themselves for anything. Like you
Yeah.
said, John Perkins. It's like most people are like, who's John Perkins? What book? What are you talking about? Those are just crazy dictators and banana republics there wearing funny suits with medals.
It was all their fault. They did it. They weren't tricked out of their country. They let it fall apart because they're evil dictators that don't have sophistication, right? They're not
Yeah.
Americanized. We need to Americanize everything.
So I would say, like, one of the things, just lastly, because I gotta run pretty soon.
Yeah,
It's about
absolutely.
it's getting late here, but the Iranians I met, Muslim Iranians, very pro-American. Like, they love America, they love
Hmm.
Americans, they love American society, they love American culture, all that stuff. They just don't want them meddling in their country,
As
and they
anyone would.
and
Yeah.
they don't like them supporting Israel, and they don't like what's happening to the Palestinians. And the Palestinian issue is the defining element of Iran's position on Israel. And most people don't know that unless they and listen closely and go and visit, that's in their constitution, that they are duty bound as a government and a people to rescue anybody that's under severe oppression,
Which is what
especially
a good government would do.
within their neighborhood. And that's what they're doing. But we're calling that terrorism in America. And what are Hamas doing other than defending their neighborhood from a overwhelming military force? But terrorism.
Always a terrorist. And that label
Terrorism.
came about in the 50s. They planned to weaponize that in the 50s.
It's Netanyahu himself pioneered Islamic terrorism. Go look
Yeah.
at the work of David Miller on that. He's done a beautiful job documenting that.
David Miller is great.
Miller, he talks about the first conference in the 1980s on, quote, Islamic terror, and it was Netanyahu. Every single bad thing we have seen in the last 50 years has that guy's fingerprints on it.
Well, didn't the English call us terrorists when we were fighting the English? We were regional terrorists.
Probably, I would imagine so, but
Everyone's a terrorist to someone. To a canary, a cat is the devil, right? Like everybody is. I don't know how that phrase goes, but
for an indigenous people who are defending themselves in a liberation struggle against a foreign colonial settler invader, and to call them terrorists when in fact the foreign country, the Jewish terrorist groups, the Irgun, the Haganah, the Lehi, some of these other groups that basically did terrorize Arabs and Palestinians in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, and ethnic cleansing in 47, 48 in the Nakba, the historic Nakba. They were labeled internationally as actual terrorist groups. The first Middle Eastern terror were Jewish terrorist groups.
Yep. Now they're called the IDF.
It's a historic fact, and they became the IDF. They became the IDF. So, I mean, you couldn't make it up. Honestly, You
want to hear something good before we end here? So,
yeah.
So this is what I think is great, because we have so many echo chambers, right? You can go to a podcast and you can hear what you want to hear. There's always someone like, oh, there's this plan, or oh, there's no plan, or doom and gloom, or optimism. Like, I just try to look for like as many different opinions as possible. And one thing that you and I had an off-camera conversation the first time we met about Palestine, because I've never been there. I don't know much. I will say this: since that conversation, I have met 2 Syrian Christians who are probably the nicest people I've ever met in my life. I was told all Syrians were terrorists and all these things. I've met 3 Palestinians, 1 Christian, 2 Muslim, all very kind people, very kind people. The last one, I was in the airport in Portland and coming back from a conference there, which, I mean, you've talked to me enough. Like, Portland's not my style, right? I just wanted to get the hell out of Portland.
It's a beautiful city, though.
It is a beautiful city. They have really trashed a gorgeous. That whole state is beautiful. The whole state's beautiful.
Yeah, it is.
But I'm at the airport and I had headphones in, and there were 2 flights to Dallas. I didn't know, so I heard boarding for Dallas, and this kind lady goes over and she goes, I happened to just see your boarding pass as you were holding it. It's not this flight. I said, wow, thank you. So I sat back down, and she had earbuds in, and I took mine out, and then they announced our gate change. So I went over and I said, hey, listen, thank you. Like, you're on the flight back to Dallas where I am. And we just started talking for like, we were delayed 2 hours. So I got 2 hours in an airport. She's Muslim, I'm Christian. She's Palestinian, I'm American. And the guy sitting across from her, I talk to everybody about everything all the time. We were talking about these things, right? Israel, what's happening there. And I'm just telling, this is what I'm seeing. This is what I read. This is what my friends around the world who study these things, this is what I'm hearing. And she said, I have never heard an American actually talk like this. And I didn't know she was Palestinian for like an hour. And I go, well, I mean, this is just, I don't know. I'm not there. That's kind of my thing. Like, I don't live in Gaza. I don't live in Israel. I'm just looking at it from a lens thousands of miles away. And she was kind of like brought to tears a little bit. Just due to the fact that she said, you're a white Christian American man, and I'm a Palestinian Muslim woman. So, and she didn't have headgear and the head stuff on or anything. Just look, she's American. She lives in America now. She moved here 4 years ago from the violence, and I couldn't even detect an accent. She was working 2 jobs, trying to get home to her kid. We're all just normal people, from no matter where you're from or what you do. We all have more in common than we have apart. The only thing that divides us is the narrative that comes from the powers that be, who are the ones that profit from war. And that
Yeah.
is the one fundamental thing that I have learned throughout all of my life and all of my attention to history and meeting millions of people throughout the course of my 48 years here on earth, is that every person I encounter, I have way more in common with them than I thought.
Mm.
And it's people like you who are bridging that gap, because a lot of stuff you're saying on here is going to be very controversial to people who have the Western narrative.
Yeah.
And it just, the faster you understand that a narrative is controlled to control you, the faster you can understand this. You shouldn't have any problem with anyone in any foreign country. You don't know them. I've never met them. I don't have
Absolutely.
beef with them at all.
You should be able to, if you are, true within yourself, you should be able to walk into any country and relate to anybody.
Yeah.
If you're true within yourself and you're confident in that, and you can walk into, and I said this at an event I spoke at recently. I said we should be able to walk into, if we want to, if praying is your thing, you should be able to walk into any church, any mosque or synagogue or Hindu temple, whatever, and pray. If there was the only place you could, and you wanted to pray in a place, why not? And there's nothing stopping you from doing that, and vice versa, inviting other people to pray in your house of worship as well. Instead, we have these people constructing these divisions, and at the end of the day, it's like that should be open to everyone, and you'd want your kids to be able to pursue that as well, to live in that type of a world, where you have that freedom
That's a
and you
different angle. That's a different angle that I'm thinking. I mean, a house of
but
worship should be for the God you worship, right?
y-
I'm
y-
not
y-
an ecumenist,
sure, sure,
but
but
I
I
think you should be able to go to any country you like and have a meal with people of different cultures, because you'll
sure,
find out that they just want to live their life too. It doesn't matter if they literally, everyone on earth just wants to be left alone, make some money, raise their kids, live a good life, and die.
but
That's
I
what
pray
everyone wants.
I prayed in churches with Muslims, because we invited them,
Sure.
and then vice versa. And that's it's we're all monotheistic, so there might be have a different name, but it's the same thing that we're praying to. But
That's your opinion. I don't share that
well, it's
opinion, but
another it's
yeah, different conversation. Yeah,
that's my understanding of the Abrahamic faiths. But that's another discussion. That's a
absolutely.
theological.
The beautiful part is you can get with someone and have a real experience together, and they're
But
from a different place and a different teaching and a different culture,
mhm,
and we all just want to pursue a better life for us and our family. And I think
yeah.
if we all get that and stop thinking, the whole news is like you're rooting for people who scream death to America. I'm pretty sure that lady I met at the airport who was very kind to me was not screaming death to America.
No, no, that's a
I'm
BS.
almost certain of that.
That's such a trope talking point you hear on Fox and everybody else, and
Yeah.
The Mark Levines of the world. And I'll just say the last thing I'll say, Eric, is I have lived in a Palestinian neighborhood. My neighbors in Palestinian, nicest people. These are people you would want as your neighbors. Trust me.
All
The
three I've met this past year have been really nice, really kind
best
people.
neighbors and the best friends you could ever wish for, and the warmest and loyal and committed and generous, and will literally open their doors as if you were their family, no questions asked. And if you needed something, it's there for you, vice versa. And it's very, very unusual culture, very unusual people. They're really unique, and it's amazing how they've been demonized when they're
Yes.
just the opposite of how they're being demonized. I find that to be incredible.
Yeah, in
And
real life, I know Jewish people, Palestinians now, Russians. I know somebody from everywhere. And in my life, because I'm a nobody, they're a nobody, and we're like very good nobodies together. It's just fundamental. Like this whole war, the saber rattling that's happening in the world today. This is by design. Don't fall into it, especially if you're a Christian. This whole, warrior for Christ. We got to. Where does it say that in the Bible, Patrick? I didn't read anywhere the words of Jesus Christ saying pick up swords and kill other people of other religions. I heard preach the gospel
definitely
to the
not.
ends of the world and love your neighbor. That's what I heard. And we need
Exactly.
more of that in today's world. And I always appreciate you being on here because you're one of the best thinkers that I know. You're one of the deepest thinkers that I know, and you're just a wealth of information. So look forward to, by the way, 21st Century Wire, get a plug in for that because you do a great job on that. Writing, videos, great weekly podcast that you do out there, great deep information. And most importantly, you are seeking the truth, not a narrative. Patrick could easily be worth millions of dollars right now being a journalist in today's world. But he built his own thing, and he's got his own voice, and he's being a pioneer out there in that space. We should all support him with views and clicks and shares and any way you possibly can. You want to give a little plug for it?
Well, yeah, drop the link there in your description, 21stcenturywire.com. Also, Patrick Henningsen.substack.com. I started a Substack as well. Different side of me you'll see there. It's more personal, more writing. So if you want to know more about my background, you read the Substack, patrickhenningsen.substack.com. Drop that link in the description as well.
That's great. That's great. Patrick, I know you got to go. Thank you so much. You've given us an hour and 45 minutes of your time from across the ocean. I really appreciate it, brother. So God bless you. God bless this country and all around the world. And we'll see you next time here on the Rice Report. Have a good one, everybody.